The school hallway smelled of floor polish and paper dust when I walked in, one of Lacey's sneakers dangling from my fingers. She'd left for class that morning in mismatched shoes again, and I'd promised myself I'd drop off the right ones before lunch. The receptionist didn't look up at first. Her keyboard clicked through a swift routine, then her fingers slowed. Her eyes narrowed at the screen and froze. "Mrs. Lindley, you're no longer listed as an approved contact," she said. I blinked. "I'm her grandmother. I've been on that list since kindergarten." "I understand, but you're not in the system anymore. No pickup, no emergency contact authority. I'm sorry." The apology landed like gravel. The phone in my purse buzzed before I even stepped back out to the parking lot. One message: "Sierra, don't call or come over again. We're done." Not a conversation, not a wound she planned to stitch. A door kicked shut. I slid into the driver's seat of the little gray sedan I could just barely afford on retirement and stared at the sentence like it might rearrange itself if I waited long enough. It didn't. My thumb hovered over the screen. "No, please," rose in my throat. No bargaining words, no maternal forgiveness speech, just a quiet exhaustion I had mistaken for patience for far too long. "Got it. Consider it your last wish. Send." My reflection looked thin in the rearview mirror. My cardigan hung a little too loose, my eyes steady, yes, but older now, heavier with the knowledge that being indispensable to someone is a fragile, dangerous identity. For years I had played the steady hand, the reliable fallback, the quiet giver, the person who stretched further than reason and called it love. But love had started to sound a lot like erasure. Lately, soft, polite, systematic. The school door clicked shut behind me, but it felt like something else closing entirely. The kind of closing that doesn't slam, the kind that seals. And driving away from campus, I realized this was not the end. I just didn't know yet what it was the beginning of. 3 weeks passed without a word. No calls, no texts. Not even one of Lacey's stick figure drawings slipped under my apartment door like she used to do when her mother wasn't looking. I told myself to let it rest. That Sierra needed space, that maybe I'd done something I didn't realize. But there's a difference between silence and replacement. That Friday, I took a long detour on my way home. I told myself it was to check traffic, but my hands knew the turns without thinking. I ended up 2 blocks away from my old house, the one where Sierra now lived, the one I still legally owned. The maple in the front yard was shedding leaves just like always, but parked in the driveway in front of the garage I helped paint 12 years ago was a U-Haul. The back was open, a few boxes stacked neatly as if someone had just arrived for the weekend. I pulled over across the street, out of view. Through the front window I saw Sierra laughing, glass in hand. She was entertaining guests. Strangers, her friends maybe. I didn't recognize them. My quilt was still draped over the living room couch. My name was still on the deed, or so I believed. That night I went back. Not to confront her, just to see. But when I turned the corner, the first thing I saw was a bright red sign zip-tied to the front gate. Private property, no trespassing. Beneath it, the mailbox I'd used for 20 years was sealed shut with a padlock. A new one, not mine. I reached into my bag for the old key anyway, as if nostalgia could override a steel clasp. It didn't fit, not even close. I didn't try the gate. I just stood there, one foot still on the sidewalk, the other on the driveway where Mark used to park. The porch light flicked on. I stepped back without thinking. My breath caught somewhere between grief and disbelief. The streetlight buzzed overhead, and behind me, my apartment key felt heavier than usual in my pocket. The envelope was thin and official-looking, with a faint window where addresses peered through like secrets. It was addressed to Sierra Leigh, but the mailing address was my apartment, not the house. At first, I thought it was a mistake, something the county had jumbled. But then I saw the seal at the top. Property tax notice for the house, my house. The line that chilled me wasn't the balance due or the assessment increase. It was the owner field. Owner Sierra Leigh. I stared at it so long the letters began to blur. I set the envelope down and opened the drawer beneath the kitchen counter, the one I kept locked out of habit more than necessity. Inside was the manila folder I'd carried with me during the move. Deed copy, tax receipts, title insurance, all with my name. Nancy Lindley. I drove to the county records office the next morning. The woman behind the glass counter smiled politely as I gave her the address. She tapped at her keyboard, then paused. "There's been a transfer filed," she said. "New deed recorded 2 months ago." She turned the screen toward me. I leaned in. The signature line read N. Lindley, scribbled in a lazy, fluid motion that looked nothing like mine. "Do you have ID?" she asked. I showed her. She frowned, then slid a request form across the desk. "Copies are 25 cents per page." I paid in silence and carried the papers out to my car like they were evidence in a trial that hadn't begun yet. Back home, I placed the forged signature next to my real one on the title copy from 10 years ago. The difference was obvious. Mine was careful, deliberate. That one was almost smug. I scanned both and attached them in an email to a lawyer a friend once recommended. I kept the subject line short: forgery, concern, property transfer. I hesitated before hitting send, not out of fear but out of the quiet realization that something was finally shifting. Then I clicked it and sat very still, listening to the weight of silence change. Mrs. Patel waved me down as I was returning from the laundromat, her purse tucked under one arm, a rolled paper clutched in the other. We used to share tomatoes over the fence in summer. Now she looked nervous, like she wasn't sure if handing me the flyer would help or make things worse. "I thought you should see this," she said, voice low. I didn't think it was right. It was a printout from a vacation rental website, one of those glossy platforms with professionally staged homes and inflated rates. I recognized the front porch first, then the lilac curtains in the dining room. My curtains. The photographs had been taken recently. The grass was dry the way it got in late summer, and my grandmother's rocking chair was still beside the front window. The listing title read, "Charming Heritage Retreat, Newly Inherited." The description underneath stung more than I expected. "Lovingly restored family estate, passed down to devoted daughter. Perfect for weekend escapes, family celebrations, and wellness retreats." My bedroom was pictured second. The quilt I'd sewn after Roger passed, white and deep green triangles stitched in long, careful nights, lay neatly over the mattress. The wooden bookshelf still held the same paperbacks. Someone had even arranged them by color like they were props. I scrolled the listing with shaking hands, then glanced up at Mrs. Patel. She looked away. "Thank you," I said. Back inside my apartment, I sat with the flyer spread on the table beside my tea, an unanswered legal reply. I didn't cry, not yet. But something pressed behind my ribs. She hadn't just taken the house. She'd repurposed my grief, monetized it, as if memories could be bought by the night. I opened my laptop and pulled up the lawyer's email again. This time I attached the listing link and typed, "Subject, urgent. Rental listing of disputed property. Images show current use of home. My belongings still inside." I pressed send. Then I turned the flyer over, took a pen, and began making a list. I waited until after dusk to call him. Arturo still worked the grounds for a few neighbors, including Mrs. Patel. He'd trimmed the boxwoods in my yard every second Saturday for 14 years. When he picked up, his voice was as calm as I remembered. "I don't want trouble," I said. "I just need eyes." He didn't ask questions, just told me what time he'd be out by the fence behind the old garden shed. He never liked Sierra much, not after the way she snapped at him over the hose valve that summer. The next day, he met me at the far corner of the alley where the back fence sagged. He carried his trimmers and a worn baseball cap low over his face. I handed him the small black box and pointed to where the hedges wrapped tight around the tool shed. He nodded once. "Give me 20 minutes. When I checked the camera feed that night, I almost dropped the tablet. 3 people wheeled suitcases up the walkway. One of them stopped to take a selfie in front of the porch swing Roger built the year before he got sick. Inside, Sierra flitted through the hallway, wine glass in hand, gesturing like a tour guide. Someone clapped, someone laughed. She had no idea she was being watched. Over the weekend, I kept the feed open while I drank my morning coffee. More strangers came. Some stayed one night, some 2. One couple brought a dog, which she allowed. They used my casserole dish and left the back gate open. I took notes. Names from the guest reviews, dates from the camera, timestamps. I saved every clip. By Monday morning, I had what I needed. I sent it all to my lawyer. Videos, the rental listing, the list of names from the website, and told him I was ready. That afternoon, he sent a cease and desist notice to the address. It was my house, my mailbox, my name on the return envelope. And that night, when I checked the feed, the porch was empty. For now, I hadn't stepped foot in the guest house since the move. It used to be my little escape, where I'd read in the afternoons or help Lacey with school projects when Sierra needed alone time. Now it sat quiet behind the main house, partially hidden by a stand of overgrown trees. Sierra hadn't touched it. The shutters hung crooked. The walkway was blanketed in leaves. I waited until dusk again. The main house showed no signs of movement, no cars in the drive, porch light off. I slipped through the alley and around the back, my steps slow, familiar. The spare key still worked. The door creaked the same way it always had. Inside, dust coated the windowsills, and the couch still sagged in the middle. Everything smelled faintly of wood and time. It hadn't been lived in, but it hadn't been emptied either. I opened the side drawer of the old desk near the window. It stuck, then gave way with a groan. My breath caught. My file folder, the one that held my original deed copy, Social Security documents, even a copy of Roger's will, just in case. I thumbed through it. Everything was still there. Then I noticed something wedged behind the drawer. A small spiral notebook, cover bent at the corner, tucked deep into the space where dust settled thickest. I pulled it free and opened it. The first few pages were nonsense. Shopping lists, scribbled thoughts. But deeper in, I found them. Rows of my name written over and over. N. Lindley. Nancy L. Lindley. Enley. Different pens, different styles, each one inching closer to how I actually signed. And then a page titled, To Do Before Retitle. Copy documents, signature samples, notary appointment. Remove her access quietly. I held the book like it might burn through my fingers. There was no hesitation in her handwriting, no second guesses. I slipped the notebook into my bag along with the folder and locked the door behind me on the way out. The air felt heavier as I walked back toward the streetlight, the notebook pressing against my side like a truth I could no longer ignore. The call came just after 9. My lawyer's voice was even, but I could hear the shift in tone, the kind that comes when pieces start falling into place. They used 2 witness signatures on the transfer form, he said. We ran them. Both belonged to Sierra's college friends. Neither of them live in state. One admitted she wasn't even present when the document was signed. I didn't speak. I just nodded, though he couldn't see me. The notary who stamped the paperwork is already flagged in another case. He's under investigation now for improperly certifying signatures. That works in our favor. He paused, letting the words land. I've prepared the injunction, he added. It'll freeze the use of the property until this is resolved. No rentals, no transfers, nothing. That afternoon, I watched through the camera feed as a couple pulled into the driveway with rolling suitcases. Sierra stepped onto the porch, talking quickly, her hands moving too fast. Then the man from the couple pointed to a paper he held, printed clearly across the top. Injunction order, filed by Buncombe County Circuit Court. Sierra turned red. The guests left, the porch emptied. I leaned back and watched the stillness take over again. The next morning, I met my lawyer at his office to review the motion. He had already filed to void the transfer. With the forged signatures, the fake notary, and the camera footage of the rentals, it was more than enough. Sometimes these things take months, he said gently. I have time, I answered. It's patience I've been running out of. He handed me a copy of the filing for my records. I tucked it into the same folder that now held Sierra's notebook, the fake signature sheet, and the original deed. It didn't feel like a victory, not yet, but it felt like the truth was breathing again. That night, I sat by the window with the camera feed open beside my tea. The porch light flickered on, then off again. No one came, no one knocked, but for the first time, it felt like something was turning. They didn't knock right away. I heard the soft shuffle of shoes outside my door, the low murmur of voices, one steady, one light and distracted. When the knock finally came, it was too soft to be confrontational. I opened the door anyway. Sierra stood there with her arms crossed, her purse slung high like she was ready to bolt at any second. Lacey was behind her, juice pouch in hand, eyes on the floor. I just wanted space, Sierra said before I could speak. But you pushed. You never gave me the chance to figure things out. Her tone was calm in the way brittle things are, one bend from snapping. The hallway smelled faintly of burnt toast, someone else's dinner gone wrong. My own tea sat cooling inside, untouched. I don't want to fight, Sierra continued. If you drop this, if you let the house go, we can avoid a public mess, no court, no back and forth. You don't need that place anymore, Mom. You live here now. Isn't this enough? Behind her, Lacey clutched the edge of her sweatshirt, still avoiding my gaze. Her hair was slightly tangled. She looked tired. I didn't respond. Not with a lecture, not with a cry, not even with a sigh. I looked at my daughter. Really looked at the way she wouldn't stand still, at the slight twitch of her jaw, at how every word she spoke seemed memorized and rehearsed. She wasn't here for peace. She was here for control. I stepped back without a word and gently closed the door. It clicked into place with the softest sound, just a latch catching, nothing dramatic. On the other side, I stood still for a moment, hand on the wood, listening as their footsteps faded down the hall. The silence that followed was cleaner than it had been in weeks. I poured out the cold tea, then turned on the kettle again. Something warmer was needed now, something quiet, something mine. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Quiet, unceremonial. No gasps, no dramatic speeches, just documents, signatures, and the blunt force of evidence. My lawyer spoke in composed paragraphs, laying out facts like bricks, the forged signatures, the illegal notarization, the rental income rooted into accounts that were never mine, the notebook, the camera footage, the injunction. Each item slid across the judge's bench like a stone dropped into water, rippling, unavoidable. Sierra sat 2 seats away, shoulders tight, eyes forward, no tears, no remorse. When her attorney tried to argue that the transfer had been a family agreement, the judge cut in gently but sharply. Fraud is not an agreement. The ruling came in minutes, though it felt like an hour ticking backward. The deed was restored to my name, the transfer voided, full legal ownership recognized. I expected relief. What I felt instead was weight, dense and clarifying, like stepping into cold air after losing track of breath. 2 days later, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number, Child Protective Services. They didn't raise their voice, didn't accuse, they recited facts. Lacey had been left alone overnight more than once. Neighbors had noticed. A teacher had filed a report. There was concern, not chaos yet. She mentioned you by name, the worker said. I closed my eyes. I wasn't surprised, not really. Does she have family willing to provide temporary care? The worker asked. Yes, I said. The answer left my mouth before doubt could catch it. Sierra didn't contest it, didn't call, didn't negotiate. She simply signed where she was told to sign. By the end of the week, a small backpack appeared on the seat beside me in the car. Quiet zippers, a pair of socks, a drawn heart on notebook paper with no message inside. When I brought her into the apartment, she didn't look up. She just walked in as if she already knew the layout, like children do when they follow instinct instead of direction. That night, after she had fallen asleep, I stood in the doorway and watched her breathe, steady and small, the quietest promise a room can make. The locksmith arrived just after noon. He didn't ask many questions, just nodded when I showed him the paperwork and got to work. The new keys were warm when he handed them over, still holding the sun. I turned them in my hand a few times before slipping them into my pocket. The house was quiet, not because it had been emptied, but because it no longer resisted me. The walls didn't feel like they were holding their breath. I walked through each room slowly, one step at a time, letting memory return in manageable waves. I left the guest house untouched, not out of nostalgia, just respect. It had done what it needed to do. Inside the main house, Lacey's things were already in the spare room. She had picked a corner by the window to lay out her sketch pad and colored pencils. She didn't say much, just nodded when I asked if she liked the room, then curled up under the blue blanket I'd found at the back of the linen closet. In the kitchen, I boiled water for tea and folded the towels I'd washed earlier that morning. Routine felt softer now, less like obligation and more like rhythm. I didn't ask Lacey for a thank you. Children shouldn't have to speak the language of repair. Presence was enough. When I picked up my phone later, Sierra's last message still sat at the top of the thread. Don't call or come over again, we're done. I didn't delete it. Instead, I tapped Edit, scrolled to the message, and moved it to a folder I renamed Archived. Not out of sentiment, just closure. I put the phone down and poured the tea. Outside, the wind had picked up. Leaves rattled against the window pane. The sound familiar, not unwelcome. I sat on the edge of the old couch, the one with worn arms and good bones, and pulled a folded blanket over my lap. The heat from the mug pressed into my palms. No voices, no doors slamming, no waiting. Just quiet. And this time it belonged to me. Because for the first time in years, the quiet wasn't an indictment. It wasn't punishment. It wasn't the hollow that followed Sierra's temper, or the uncertainty of waiting for the next request, the next demand, the next bite out of myself I'd be expected to offer. It was simply quiet, the kind that arrives when things are finally allowed to settle where they were always meant to be. The next morning, sunlight hit the floor in a thin gold line across the living room. Lacey wandered in wearing sock feet and the oversized sweatshirt she insisted on sleeping in, eyes still heavy with sleep. She didn't say good morning. She didn't have to. She just curled up next to me on the couch, head against my arm. That small, wordless weight unlocked something inside me I'd been holding too tightly for too long. We sat like that for a while. No questions, no explanations, no demands. Later, we made oatmeal. She stirred in cinnamon and too much honey, then wrinkled her nose and declared it good enough. She ate half of it. I ate the rest. She followed me around the house for most of the morning, not clingy, just orbiting, a quiet planet in need of gravity, and I found that I didn't mind being its center. That afternoon, she unpacked her backpack for the first time. Not everything, just the things she liked. Colored pencils, the crumpled notebook with doodles along the margins, one stuffed rabbit with one ear bent permanently to the left. She placed it on the pillow in her new room, stepped back, then nodded at it as if granting permission for it to belong. I didn't say anything, I just watched. By evening, the house felt lived in again. Not full, not yet, but inhabited in the way homes feel when the right person is in them, even if only one person and one small child. I made soup for dinner. Lacey drew pictures at the table, messy lines, bright colors. At one point, she held up a little stick figure next to a bigger stick figure, both with curly lines on top meant to be hair. "Who's that?" I asked softly. She shrugged. "Us." The words stayed with me all night. Later, after she fell asleep, I walked through the hallway, turned off lights, made sure the doors were locked. Ordinary motions, but each one felt like a reclaiming. The house wasn't just mine again legally. It was mine again in the ways that mattered. A few days passed quietly. My lawyer sent updates. The injunction held. Sierra's attorney attempted a motion to reconsider. It was denied. More paperwork would follow, more hearings, more steps. But none of it rattled me the way it once would have. For the first time, I wasn't fighting from loss. I was standing on solid ground. One evening, after dinner, Lacey appeared beside me on the couch holding her drawing notebook. She opened it to a blank page, then pointed at the couch cushion. "Sit," she said. I sat. She began to draw a tree, a simple one at first, a trunk, branches, leaves. Then she added a swing beneath it, and two figures underneath, me and her. The swing swayed in the drawing, as if she'd captured not the image but the memory of a movement. I didn't ask what it meant, I didn't need to. The next morning, as sunlight stretched across the kitchen tile, my phone buzzed. A new message. From Sierra. Just a single line. "We need to talk." I stared at it, not with dread, not with hope. Just clarity. There was a time when that message would have sent me spiraling, scrambling to fix, to soothe, to smooth the crack before it became a break. But now? I typed back, "Not right now." I set the phone down. The kettle hissed softly. Lacey padded into the kitchen wearing mismatched socks, intentionally mismatched this time, and climbed onto one of the chairs. Her hair was a mess. She didn't care. I didn't either. I poured tea. She poured cereal. A peaceful morning. When the mail arrived, I sifted through it at the counter. Most of it was expected. Water bill, insurance statement, a catalog I'd never subscribed to. And then one envelope I recognized immediately, the county seal at the corner. It wasn't another notice. It wasn't a warning. It was the official record of the reinstated deed. My name printed cleanly, legally, permanently. Nancy Lindley, owner. I placed it in the folder with the notebook, the forged pages, the copied signatures. Evidence of what had been taken. Evidence of what had been returned. But also something else. The ending of one chapter. The threshold of another. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. Later that afternoon, Lacey and I walked the yard together. She picked leaves off the hedge, held them up to the light, and announced each one interesting in the way children do when they're simply glad something exists. I watched her move, unworried, unhurried, free in a way she hadn't been in months. And I realized something. This house wasn't the victory. She was. The chance to give her steadiness, the chance to give myself the same, the chance to rebuild in ways I didn't know we needed. As the sun went down, we sat on the porch, the same porch that had once felt like a battleground, and watched the last light fade behind the maple. Lacey leaned against me, warm and small. "Grandma?" she murmured. "Yes, sweetheart. Are we staying here for real?" I looked at the yard, the house, the quiet. Then I looked at her. "Yes," I said softly, "for real." She nodded once. Then she took my hand, not tightly, not fearfully, just because she wanted to. And as the porch light flickered on, steady this time, a thought settled in my chest with the weight of truth. Everything Sierra tried to take, she had already lost. And everything I thought I had lost, it had finally come home.